So you mentioned that you had only heard 10 minutes before the press conference. What went through your mind?
You know, at that moment, since I was expecting it, it was sort of, wow, this is wonderful, and now I have to go in and make sure that I can deliver my remarks coherently.
Of course. And when did you first learn?
So that was a little more than a week ago when Katie Hall phoned me, and obviously at that point I knew I was a finalist. I have to say, you know, I hadn't heard from her for a bit. As with any process that you're going through where you've been interviewed and you haven't heard, you get a little bit worried, and so I was exhilarated when I got the call.
Fantastic. And when did you tell your family?
Well, I told my wife immediately, right? So I got off the phone with Katie and I phoned Lori. With Danny, I was a little bit more careful about it just because I didn't want to put him in the position of having to keep a secret, which was very well guarded, as you know, and I didn't want to put him in the position of you know, he could get uncomfortable questions at the high school. So what I told him immediately was that I was a finalist and I was under serious consideration, and did he have any questions that he wanted to ask me about that. I finally told Danny Friday night.
And how did he take it?
He smiled at me. He said that was fine. I think he asked me whether he had to wear a tie, and he wanted to know whether he could wear his orange socks.
Oh, that's fantastic. And when did you accept the nomination?
I accepted the nomination the moment that it was offered to me. I mean, I have been very enthusiastic about taking this position. As I said at the press conference, you know, there was a decision that I had to make, and that every administrator at this university has to make, about whether or not to leave behind their research in particular. I do hope that I'll be able to teach occasionally as president, as Shirley Tillman has done, but you make a decision to leave behind your scholarship, and particularly in a job that's as all-consuming as the president's job, there's not much choice about that. So that's a serious choice, but once I had made that decision, I was sure I wanted to move forward.
How does a constitutional law expert like yourself become provost and then president of a university without a law school?
Yeah. So I'll tell you one thing about that. You know, when I was moving here from NYU, my colleagues, who are still very good friends, and I had a wonderful career at NYU, but some of them were trying to keep me from coming here, and the philosopher Tom Nagel had a conversation with me where he made one of the worst predictions that I've ever heard, which, you know, and philosophers are not in the business of prediction, but one of the things Tom said to me at the time was, you know, Chris, you should stay at NYU, because if you go to a school without a law school, you'll be a lot less central to what goes on at the university, and a lot less involved in the administration. And I have to tell you, at the time, I replied to him, look, that's fine with me. I've been in the, you know, doing administrative things. I've chaired the appointments committee here. I want to spend all my time on teaching and research. So I'll go to Princeton, and I understand that's a cost, but it's you know, it isn't something that I had anticipated when I came here. As I've said to people before, when Amy Gutman left the provost's office, I really did not consider myself in any sense a candidate at that point. I got a telephone call from Shirley Tillman's office at one point, asking me to come in and meet with the president to give her advice. And I had been doing my best to do what I told Tom Nagel I would do, which is stay in teaching and research. So I think some of it, though, is the reason I have stayed in the role and enjoyed it is because of my commitment to this university and how much it means to me. And there are some people who just know they want to go into a university administration, and some of those people leave and go to universities they don't know in order to do that. I can't imagine doing that. For me, the reason to do this job is as a way of serving an institution that has made a transformative difference in my own life.
What has the last week been like for you? We heard you were in St. Louis. Can you tell us what you're doing in St. Louis?
True. Well, you've been doing your homework. I was out in St. Louis giving a talk on religious freedom, which you can find on the web, I think, at the Danforth Center on Religion and Politics. So it's a center with a Princeton connection, both because John C. Danforth, class of '58, gave the gift to establish the center, and It's led by Marie Griffith and Lee Schmidt, two terrific faculty members who used to be here. But I went out there to give an academic paper. Probably the last time I'll do that for you. But it was nice to be out there. And in some ways, it made it a little bit easier to be away from campus. I wasn't having to dodge questions quite as much as I would otherwise have to
Absolutely.
be doing.
So you've been provost since 2004.
Yeah.
And from the outside, it seems that the Office of the Provost is mainly concerned with things like financial matters, university, administrative matters. How do you plan to transition into a role where you'll be seen as the authority, as the figurehead of all kinds of facets of university life, student life, things like that?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I have to say is I'm looking forward to that aspect of the change. It really is true. The Provost's office does have to do with a very wide variety of matters. So one of the groups that I chair around this table is the academic planning group that does approve all curricular initiatives and new academic programs. But one of the reasons you have a provost is to keep the president out of committee meetings so that the president can be out in the community in the hustings. And I look forward to that. I've had some opportunity to do that while I'm provost, and I've enjoyed it, but for me it's an attraction of the job to be able to do that.
Fantastic. In an interview we did with President Tillman, I think it was in September, she announced she was stepping down at the end of the year. She said that one of the main things she felt that was left unfinished from her presidency was reviving or revamping the residential college system.
Right, yeah.
Have you given any thought to the residential college system and what you think of it moving forward?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say, almost anything on the Princeton campus is always unfinished work, right? And that's a little bit of what I said about the reinterpretation and renewal of traditions. I think one of the fabulous things about this campus is that we are always asking, how can we do better what we've been doing for a long time? On the other hand, I feel like we've come a long way, in terms of the kind of options that we now have and the ways in which we've created inclusivity and support throughout the 4 years of the Princeton experience. So the difference between where those residential colleges were when Shirley Tillman took office and where they are now is remarkable. And obviously the same can be said about Harold Shapiro's tenure, which really put them in process. That said, for me, one of the things that I find kind of an opportunity for us in this regard is we've always hoped that, and I think students have hoped, that these residential colleges will become sites of community in the same way that, for example, the eating clubs are. And I remember one particular CPUC meeting a few years ago where there was a panel talking about intellectual life at Princeton outside of the classroom. And there were discussions about conversations that took place over dinner in the eating clubs, in the Behrman Society of Undergraduate Fellows, in various other places. And there was a sense that even though there were lots of things that were organized in the residential colleges, maybe students didn't feel the same ownership of those things that they sometimes do in other venues. I find this sometimes, if the master invites me to come to a group, I sometimes feel like, well, there's a group of people here, and the master may have, dragged a couple of them by the sleeve before they came into the room. Yeah. Whereas if I get an invitation from a student, then the room is full of other students. And I think one of the things that we need to do is promote that kind of ownership of the student life within the residential colleges and that same kind of activity. I think we're moving in the right direction. I think Dean Bell-Smith has paid a lot of attention to this, and I think she's moving things in the right direction.
Sure. Yeah. Everyone, I don't think we're talking about eating clubs at some point.
Everyone at Princeton always talks about eating clubs.
Absolutely. And one development that we think the administration has put their support behind is multi-club picker.
Yeah.
Is that something you also support?
I certainly support that, yes. Right. I think the wonderful thing about Princeton now is that there are choices and different people find their places. And in my own experience as an undergraduate at Princeton, I was a member of Elm Club during my junior year, which of course no longer exists. Sure. And now the building is now the Carl Field Center. But that was an important source of friendships for me. And then senior year, I was independent with 3 roommates whom I had met at Elm in Spelman. I recognize from my own experience here that different students look for different options. And I think one of the things that is important now is there are these different options, and they're meaningful options for students.
What about the option of Greek life? Another thing people will be talking about. Of course, President implemented the ban on freshman rush this year. What are your thoughts on Greek life?
Well, I was a strong supporter of the policy that she and the trustees adopted in that regard, and for the reasons that were set out in connection with that policy. So the data we had both suggested a significant degree of risk to freshmen from some of the activities associated with at least some of the fraternities in particular, and a kind of a significant degree of social separation. And what we're looking for on the campus, especially during the freshman year, is a chance for students to mix and integrate. So I fully support the policy that's in place.
Fantastic. And you mentioned you've been involved with academic policy during your time as provost. Another big topic, grade deflation. Right?
What I call the grading fairness policy. Right? The grading, right? So let me say this about that policy. And I think right now we are in a good place on that policy. And again, I think Val Smith has been working to shape it around the edges in appropriate ways. The motivation and the reason I think of it as a grading fairness policy is that, first of all, it has not changed the cumulative grade point average at Princeton, except for about 2 basis points. That is the difference between, say, a 3.67 and a 3.65. And secondly, the policy was motivated when faculty committees were looking at the grades in different departments and finding that, in some sense, how students were doing and whether you got a B+ or an A- depended not on the work you were submitting, but on rather different standards that were being applied in different departments. And it's hard to defend that kind of arbitrariness. So I think it's very important that we look at this and make sure that the policy is well understood. There's been misunderstandings around it, that we make sure that we are sensitive to the concerns that students and faculty members have about it. But I think that kind of fairness is very important in what it is that we do.
Looking forward, how would you assess the university's fiscal health in 2013?
Well, the good news is that our fiscal health is quite strong right now. We have successfully come out of that financial downturn and rebaselined the budget. Our units have, with very rare exceptions, stayed within their new budgets, which they need to be able to do. And we're now in a position where we are again looking forward and saying, okay, how do we grow from where we are right now? I think the real question that we have to ask is not so much about the financial crisis, which at this point is, fortunately, in the rearview mirror, but about what lies ahead and how that compares to the past. So there was a period when if you looked at about 25 to 30 years of endowment return, and I know you and I have had a number of discussions about the endowments. You may be one of the people who knows this, but not many do. We were averaging about 15.5% per year. Now, most economists believe that that was the consequence of one of the great bull markets in financial history, and maybe we see that again. But the prudent prediction would be that we are not going to see that return. We believe that we can obtain the kinds of returns and that Andy Golden and his outstanding team at Printco can obtain the kind of 10% annualized returns that we've seen over the past decade, even including the financial crisis, and that allows us to sustain what we're doing. But for a long time, that kind of above expectations growth was something that affected us and everybody else in higher education. So if you look at that period, you see universities expanding rapidly in ways that, particularly in our portion of the sector, were driven by their endowments. And I do think we're going to have to think more creatively and strategically about how we grow under circumstances where we should be very happy if we once again see those kinds of returns, but where we can't make the mistake of thinking that we're entitled to them. So universities raise money so that they can basically sustain their hearts, I would say, and extend their reach. And I would expect that over the course of my presidency, we will have a fundraising campaign. But you're also absolutely right. It's too early right now. At this point, we are celebrating the success of Aspire and thanking our alumni for their loyalty. So fortunately, this is a time for all of us to breathe. But there are a number of initiatives right now that this university is pursuing very aggressively, including the arts neighborhood and internationalization, and we will continue to seek funding for those.
Fantastic. I want to move away from 2013 and go back to 1979, I think, when you entered the university.
My memories are getting dimmer.
How would you describe your 4 years here at Princeton?
Well, my 4 years here were transformative, happy. They were years that stretched me, that gave me friendships that have lasted a lifetime since then, that forced me to rethink the ideals that I brought to the university, and that enabled me to come away with understandings of ideas and of people and of places that I didn't have before I came. So it is, I can't think. I suppose, look, the psychologists all tell us it's the first 4 years that are the most important, but we can't remember those. So the years that I remember, these were certainly years that defined me as a person, and they were also very happy years.
And how do you think the university's changed since the
Wow. Well, as I said in my remarks, we have become more inclusive in ways that are very important, and that is striking to me. And there are aspects of that I appreciate. Even more from year to year. I just had a capacity to reconnect with one of my senior year roommates who was back here for the Every Voice conference that we just had over this weekend. And I was talking to a number of the alumni who were back for that conference about what their experiences were like during the time that they were here. And that for me is kind of a vivid reminder of how much Princeton has changed with regard to questions about inclusivity. On the other hand, I'll also tell you that there are times, there are places on this campus that didn't exist when I was here, and I'll walk by them and I'll think, well, what was this when I was here? But then there are times when I can walk someplace and I can see a group of students in blue jeans and T-shirts, and I'll have this kind of Proustian moment, and it will feel just like it was when I was on campus. So again, it's the striking thing about Princeton that we are preserving so much of this character that distinguishes us as a university, but also reinventing it as we go along.
Absolutely. Did you have any frustrations with the university during your time?
Well, I must have had frustration with the university when I was here. It's hard for me to recall exactly what those. At this point, this may be one of the tricks that memory plays on us in retrospect, because it's also a time when, as you know, we're all growing as people. But I was very grateful for the education that I was getting.
Fantastic. You also mentioned in your remarks the significance of online education policy moving forward.
Yeah.
Now, I think I'm correct in saying you're on the board of Coursera?
Not on the board. I'm on the advisory
council.
Which is a bit different. Yeah.
Okay. And will you plan to do Princeton?
For Daphne Kohler to read this in the Daily Princetonian, I will have to rotate off of that. I think most of the people who are on it are actually provosts. There are one or two chancellors or presidents, but I think it would be good for whoever my successor is as provost to represent the university in that capacity. As you were saying earlier, there are different roles for different offices here.
Absolutely. Thinking about the way schools like Harvard or MIT have flung themselves into the online education space, how do you see Princeton's role in the maturing field of online education?
Yeah, I think that is one of those questions we really have to think collectively about as a university. What I've been very glad about with regard to Coursera is it means, so to speak, we've jumped into the pool, right, and we're learning how to swim. So we have a set of faculty members who, instead of saying, this is very foreign to what we do here at Princeton, are instead saying, I've been doing this, and it's helping my teaching in my own classroom here on the Princeton campus, and it's also a blast to reach students as far away as Kathmandu, right? So I think that's been important. I think we have to think hard about where we are in the space. Right now, although we've been very active with Coursera, there are other respects in which we are the most conservative university in the country with regard to these things. So I'm not sure if there's any other university that offers no online course for credit and no kind of online certificate program. And we've taken that position very deliberately. But I think we do need to ask ourselves, all right, given how fast things are changing and given our mission to make a difference in the world, is this the best place for us to be?
Perfect. And finally, what are you most excited about moving forward?
What I was excited about, wow, in addition to no longer having to explain at the beginning of all my speeches exactly what it is a provost is or does, I would really say it goes back to a difference that you pointed out earlier in the conversation, which is this is an opportunity for me to spend time really out there, both speaking on behalf of the university and listening on behalf of the university, spending more time with students than I've been able to do, spending more time with alumni than I've been able to do, and dealing in a different capacity with faculty and staff. And I enjoy that and I look forward to it.
Perfect. We look forward to it too. Thank
Great.
you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Great set of questions and I appreciate it.
Thank you.